Story 1. The Screams. The James River lay before us like a slab of obsidian, its glassy surface swallowing the faint starlight of a moonless October night in rural Virginia. It was a Friday, the air sharp with autumn's bite, and my buddies, Jake, Travis, Sam, and I, had piled into Travis's beat-up Chevy for some night fishing. We'd claimed a muddy stretch of shoreline, a half-hour's drive from anything resembling civilization, where the woods pressed in close and the river whispered secrets in its slow, endless flow. Our fire crackled, spitting embers into the dark, rods propped against a cooler of Bud Light, the orange glow painting our faces in flickering shadows. We were halfway through a story, Jake bragging about some girl he'd almost kissed in 10th grade, when the laughter died, snuffed out like a candle in a storm. It wasn't a sound that stopped us, not at first. Just a feeling, a cold weight settling over us like damp fog. We turned as one, eyes locking on the far bank, where the trees melted into a wall of blackness. My skin prickled, a shiver crawling up my spine as if something out there was staring back, its gaze heavy and unseen. Jake, ever the loudmouth, tried to break the tension. "What, y'all see Bigfoot or something?" His grin faltered, voice thin, and Travis shot him a glare that could have cut steel. The fire popped, a weak protest against the night, but it felt small, fragile, like it could wink out any second. Sam shifted closer to the flames, his wiry frame hunched, muttering, "Feels off, man." Then it came, a scream, raw and jagged, tearing through the silence from across the river. It wasn't a fox, not a coyote. This was human, but wrong, stripped of language, a primal wail of someone, or something, being gutted alive. My blood turned to ice, every hair on my body vibrating with terror. The sound clawed at the air, high and piercing, a shriek of pure agony that echoed off the water and sank into my bones. We froze, beer cans slipping from numb fingers, eyes wide and unblinking, staring into the void where it came from. "What the hell was that?" Sam whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. No one answered. We couldn't. The scream cut off, leaving a hollow silence that pressed down harder than the noise. My chest tightened, breath shallow, the cold seeping deeper as the fire's warmth faded from my skin. Travis, the oldest at 28 and the only one with a lick of sense, jabbed a stick into the flames, muttering, "Probably some drunk asshole messing around." But his hands shook, and his eyes kept darting to the river, betraying the lie. I wanted to believe him, needed to, but the air had shifted, thick with a malice I couldn't name. The woods behind us rustled, a faint stirring of leaves, maybe the wind, maybe not. Jake stood, brushing dirt off his jeans with a forced laugh. "Y'all are chicken shit. I'm taking a leak." He swaggered toward the trees, disappearing into the dark, his bravado a thin shield. Seconds later, the second scream erupted, louder, fiercer, a banshee howl that shook the ground beneath us. It came from the same spot across the river, but closer now, as if it had crossed the water in an instant, rushing toward us with unholy speed. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. Sam bolted up, knocking over his chair while Travis fumbled for his phone, its glow stark against his ashen face. "We're gone," he snapped, voice tight. But before we could move, Jake stumbled back from the woods, his face a mask of chalk, eyes wild with panic. "Something's out there," he gasped, tripping over a root. "I heard it, breathing, right behind me, heavy, like it was waiting." That was it. We ran, abandoning rods, coolers, everything, sprinting for the trucks parked a dozen yards up the bank. My boots sank into the mud, each step a fight against the earth's grip, and I swore I felt eyes boring into my back, cold, predatory, relentless. The fire dwindled to a pinprick behind us, its light swallowed by the trees. We were halfway there, lungs burning, when the third scream hit. Not from across the river, but here, on our side, exploding from the bushes just feet away. It was deafening, a guttural roar laced with something inhuman, like a throat torn open by rage and pain. I stumbled, catching myself on Travis's arm, his curse lost in the chaos. We didn't stop. Sam reached his truck first, keys jangling as he yanked the door open, while Jake dove into the bed, screaming, "Go, go, go!" I piled into Travis's cab, the engine roaring to life as he floored it. Tires spun, spitting gravel, and then we were peeling out. The fourth scream chasing us from beyond the tree line, a final bone-chilling wail that promised it wasn't done. The headlights sliced through the dark, but the road felt endless, the woods pressing closer, branches scraping the truck like claws. No one spoke, our breaths ragged, the silence between us thick with unspoken terror. We never went back. Not for the gear, not for answers. Days later, I heard whispers in town, hunters finding strange tracks by the river, too big for a man, too deep for an animal. But I didn't care. Whatever it was, it had seen us, marked us, and every night since, when the wind howls just right, I hear it. That scream, faint but growing, calling me back to the dark. Story 2, the cackle in the basement. The basement of our old house was a festering wound beneath the floors, a place where light surrendered to shadow, and the air hung thick with the smell of mildew and something faintly metallic. It was late October in Rochester, New York, the kind of night where the wind shrieked through the skeletal trees outside, clawing at the warped window panes of our creaking Victorian home. I was 23, stuck living with my father and younger sister Ellie, after college spat me out into a jobless void. That night I was alone, tasked with the mundane chore of laundry, descending into the basement like a fool stepping into a crypt. The laundry room was a cramped box carved out of the larger basement, separated by a thin wooden wall and a door that never sat right in its frame. Beyond it, the other side stretched into a black abyss, the single bulb there having burned out 3 days prior. I'd meant to replace it. But every time I thought of venturing past that wall, a shiver crawled up my spine. Something about the silence out there felt wrong, like it was listening. The washer thudded to life as I shoved in a load of Ellie's stained hoodies, its mechanical growl the only sound in the stillness. Above, the house groaned under the storm's assault, but down here it was a different world, a cold, damp purgatory. I turned to leave, the flickering fluorescent bulb overhead casting my shadow long and jagged across the concrete floor. That's when it happened. A sound, low, rasping, like a he who'd smoked her lungs to ash over 100 years, slithered out of the darkness beyond the wall. A cackle, deep and wet, as if something with a throat full of gravel was mocking me. My heart seized, a spike of ice driving through my chest. I froze, eyes darting to the door, which hung slightly ajar, swaying as if nudged by an unseen breath. "Ellie," I croaked, voice trembling, knowing full well she was upstairs, probably asleep with her headphones on. No answer came, just the echo of that laugh curling around me like smoke. It came again, louder, closer, a guttural chortle that scraped against my eardrums. It wasn't human, not quite. There was a hoarseness to it, a phlegmy rattle, like whatever made it had clawed its way out of a grave. My mind conjured horrors, a hunched figure, skin like shriveled leather, eyeless sockets weeping black tar, grinning at me from the shadows. My legs jolted awake before my brain could catch up, propelling me toward the stairs. The cackle chased me, swelling into a chorus of malice, and I swore I felt hot, rancid breath graze the back of my neck. The wooden steps moaned under my weight, each one threatening to snap as I scrambled upward, the door to the kitchen a beacon in the gloom. I burst into the light, slamming the basement door behind me, the lock clicking with a trembling hand. The kitchen was a sterile contrast, white tiles, buzzing fluorescent strips. But the safety felt fragile, like a lie. I sank into a chair, chest heaving, the storm outside a dull roar compared to the pounding in my skull. The cackle lingered in my ears, a phantom sound that wouldn't fade, and I couldn't shake the image of something scuttling across the basement floor, its claws clicking on concrete. Hours later, my father trudged in from his night shift at the steel mill, his boots caked with mud. I didn't tell him what I'd heard, couldn't. Instead, I dragged him downstairs to replace the bulb, my flashlight trembling as we crossed the threshold. The new light buzzed to life, illuminating nothing but dust and spider webs, the air thick with a chill that didn't belong. No footprints, no signs of life, just an empty expanse. But as we turned to leave, the temperature plummeted, and from somewhere deep in the floor I heard it, a faint, taunting cackle, whispering my name like a curse. I never spoke of it, not to Dad, not to Ellie. But at night, when the house falls silent, I still hear it calling from below. The days following that cackle were a descent into a living shadow, my existence reduced to a hollow shell pacing the house with bloodshot eyes and nerves strung tight as piano wire. Ellie noticed something was off. She'd catch me staring down the basement stairs every time I passed, asking why. But I'd just shake my head, muttering about sleepless nights. Dad didn't care. Too worn out from endless night shifts, his calloused hands more interested in gripping a beer bottle than asking questions before he passed out in his armchair. But deep inside, I knew whatever was down there wasn't done with me. It was waiting, lurking, and every creak of the floorboards or whistle of wind through the cracks jolted my heart into my throat. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to face it, though the very thought twisted my guts into knots. I grabbed the old flashlight from the kitchen drawer, its sickly yellow beam shaking as much as my hand, and snatched Dad's hammer from the toolbox. Heavy, cold, a small comfort against the unknown. The basement door creaked open with a ghastly wail, like the sigh of a trapped soul. A frigid gust rushed up, wrapping around my legs like invisible hands, tugging me down the steps. The new bulb still burned, but it didn't banish the darkness. It only warped it, turning the space into a lit nightmare. I crossed the laundry room, the damp concrete sticking to my boots, and approached the wooden wall. The door beyond was shut tight now, but I swear it trembled, as if something was tapping from the other side. I raised the flashlight, its beam sweeping the gaps, and then I saw it. A black tar-like streak oozing from beneath the crack, reeking of rotting flesh. The cackle erupted again, so close I felt it vibrate in my chest. I stumbled back, the hammer slipping from my grip to clatter on the floor, the metallic clang echoing like a death knell. "You bastard, what are you?" I screamed, my voice cracking in panic. The response was a guttural chuckle, clearer now, as if it stood just behind the wall, inches away. I grabbed the hammer, hands shaking, and smashed it into the door. Wood splintered, shards flying, and I charged through, flashlight darting wildly. Beyond was a narrow crawl space, choked with rusted pipes and thick cobwebs. But in the far corner, beneath a shroud of pitch-black shadow, I saw it. A hunched figure, unnaturally tall, its head cocked to one side like a broken neck. Its skin, if you could call it that, was shriveled, gray, weeping black fluid from fissures. Its mouth gaped open, toothless, a gaping black maw spewing that hoarse cackle. I froze, legs rooted to the floor as it slowly turned. No eyes, just two empty sockets, bottomless pits, yet I swear it stared right through me. "You been here long," it rasped, its voice like stone grinding stone, and then it moved forward, feet not touching the ground, gliding like a wraith. I screamed, swinging the hammer, but it dissolved into black smoke just as the head struck, the cackle reverberating through the basement. I ran, scrambling up the stairs, tumbling into the kitchen, slamming and locking the door behind me, collapsing into a trembling heap, breath ragged. Morning found me still there, Ellie staring wide-eyed as she spotted the hammer, now coated in that vile black sludge. She asked, but I didn't answer, just stared at the basement door. Dad checked later, grumbling there was nothing but dust, but I knew it was still there, waiting for me to return. And every night when I close my eyes, the cackle rises again, closer, colder, a promise of a nightmare that never ends. Story 3. Whispers from the Attic Void. The old house on Elmwood Lane was a sagging relic, its warped clapboard siding peeling like dead skin under the gray Ohio sky. I was 7 when we moved in, a scrawny kid with a mop of brown hair and a tendency to jump at shadows. My room wasn't really a room, it was a converted nook tacked onto the attic, a claustrophobic box with slanted ceilings and a single grimy window that rattled in the wind. The previous owners, a family with twin daughters, had used it as a playroom, leaving behind echoes of laughter I could never quite hear. But the real oddity was the closet, a massive elevated space reachable only by a rickety set of wooden stairs, its sliding door looming like a silent sentinel. Inside, it was a chaotic tomb of my childhood junk. Broken action figures, a dusty teddy bear with one eye, and a dented container of Legos, all shoved in by my mom to keep the floor clear. I hated that room. It sat on its own floor, separated from the rest of the house by a narrow staircase that creaked like bones underfoot. Mom and Dad slept downstairs, their snores a distant hum, while my older sister Clara had a room across the hall from them. Up here I was alone, the wind moaning through the eaves like a mourner at a funeral. The isolation gnawed at me, but the closet, that hulking shadowed maw, made it worse. Its door was heavy, warped, and stuck halfway most days, but at night it seemed to watch me, a black void swallowing the moonlight that dared creep through my window. One night, after Mom had let us watch Poltergeist, a mistake she'd later regret, I lay in bed, the quilt pulled tight to my chin, eyes darting to every corner. The TV's static ghosts still danced in my head, whispering about things hiding in the dark. Then it came, a faint mechanical whir, like a toy car revving up, echoing from the closet. My breath hitched, a cold fist squeezing my lungs. I bolted upright, heart hammering, and stared at the stairs leading up to that gaping door. The sound stopped, leaving only the wind's low wail, but my legs were already moving. I stumbled down the attic stairs, bare feet slapping the cold wood, and burst into my parents' room, sobbing about noises. Dad groaned, half asleep, while Mom peeked into my closet with a flashlight, its beam trembling in her hand. "Nothing's there, sweetie," she said, her voice soft but firm. They let me sleep between them that night, the warmth of their bodies a flimsy shield against the dread. The next night I tried to forget, curling under my blanket with a flashlight clutched like a talisman. Clara had teased me all day, calling me a baby, but she didn't know how the room felt, like it was holding its breath. I'd almost drifted off when it happened again, a sharp clatter like a bucket of Legos tipping over, spilling across the closet floor. The sound ricocheted through the silence, loud and deliberate. I ran again, pounding on Mom and Dad's door, tears streaking my face. Dad's patience was fraying. He muttered about imagination and stomped upstairs, his work boots thudding. He yanked the closet door wider, revealing a pile of Legos scattered across the planks. "See? It just fell," he growled, kicking the container back into place. Mom nodded, but her eyes lingered on the mess, a flicker of unease crossing her face. I slept in their room again, Dad's snores drowning out my whimpers. The third night, Dad had had enough. "No more nonsense," he barked, locking their door with a click that echoed down the hall. I trudged back to my room, the stairs creaking like a warning. The house was silent, the storm outside reduced to a dull murmur. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, eyes wide, the flashlight's beam darting from the window to the closet. My imagination ran wild. Clowns with jagged teeth, skeletal hands reaching from the dark. An hour crawled by, each second a weight on my chest, until it happened. A low, grinding rumble, the sound of the closet door sliding open with force. Moonlight poured in, cold and pale, illuminating a figure at the top of the stairs. A tall, thin silhouette, its head cocked unnaturally, swaying like a puppet on frayed strings. A scream ripped from my throat, shrill and piercing, shattering the night as terror flooded my veins. A primal, icy dread I can still taste decades later. The figure jolted, its limbs jerking like a broken toy, and leapt down the stairs in one fluid, impossible motion. It darted past my bed, a blur of shadow and cloth, and vanished out the door. Footsteps thundered downstairs. Mom's panicked cries, Dad's heavy boots. But the front door slammed open, then shut, swallowed by the wind. Dad chased after it, flashlight swinging wildly in the yard. The night was empty, the figure gone. Mom clutched me, her hands trembling as we huddled in my room, the closet door yawning wide, its contents untouched except for that spilled Lego pile. The police came, their lights flashing red and blue through the windows, but they found nothing. No footprints, no forced entry, just an unlocked attic window they swore we'd secured. They called it a drifter, a petty thief, spooked by my scream, but I knew better. That figure wasn't human, not entirely. Its movements were too quick, too wrong, and the way it stood there watching me felt like it knew me. We moved a year later. The house sold to some oblivious couple, but I never forgot. Even now, in my quiet apartment, when the wind picks up, I hear it. That faint cackle of Legos spilling, and I wonder if it's still up there, waiting in the dark, sliding that door open just for me. Story 4, Keys of the Dead. The bus rattled down the cracked highways of southern Louisiana, a rickety metal beast, ferrying a pack of 8th graders on the so-called Louisiana tour. It was spring, the air thick with humidity and the drone of cicadas, but I barely noticed, my nose buried in a tattered paperback about haunted houses. I was 13, gangly and quiet, the kind of kid who'd rather read than talk, stuck on a trip I hadn't wanted to take. The itinerary was a blur of historical markers and swamps, but the name Myrtle's Plantation stuck out. A sprawling, antebellum mansion in St. Francisville, infamous as one of the most haunted spots in the country. The brochure promised ghost stories, and my classmates buzzed with excitement, but I felt a knot of dread tighten in my gut as we pulled up to its wrought iron gates. The plantation loomed under a canopy of moss-draped oaks, its white columns stained with age, windows glinting like empty eyes. Our group, 30 kids, 2 teachers, and a wiry tour guide named Ms. Thibodeau, shuffled inside, the wooden floors groaning under our sneakers. The air was heavy, stale with the scent of old wood, and something faintly sour, like decay seeping through the walls. We moved from room to room, Ms. Thibodeau's voice a nasal drone about slave quarters and Civil War relics, but I lagged behind, my eyes tracing the shadows that seemed to shift when no one was looking. By the time we reached the parlor, a grand space with peeling wallpaper and a chandelier dripping crystals like frozen tears, I was already on edge, the chatter of my friends fading into a dull hum. It started soft, a single mournful note, like a piano key struck far away. I froze, my book slipping in my sweaty grip, ears straining against the guide's lecture. There it was again, plink, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the room's stillness. My head swiveled, searching for a source, but the parlor was bare. No piano, no furniture beyond a few moth-eaten chairs. The sound came a third time, louder, a discordant thunk that vibrated in my chest. I glanced at my buddies, Tommy and Grace, huddled near the guide, their faces blank, oblivious. "You hear that?" I whispered, nudging Tommy's elbow. He frowned, shaking his head. "Hear what, weirdo?" Grace smirked, rolling her eyes, and I shrank back, cheeks burning, but the note struck again. Plink. And I knew I wasn't imagining it. The room felt colder now, the air pressing against my skin like damp cloth. I scanned the crowd, Miss Thibodeau droning on about some plantation mistress, when my eyes caught hers. A woman in a gray shawl, standing apart near the window, her face pale and sharp. She wasn't with our group, her clothes too old-fashioned, too worn, but no one else seemed to notice her. Another note. Thunk. And her head tilted, eyes locking onto mine. She raised a bony finger, pointing at me, then tapped her ear with a questioning squint. My breath hitched. She heard it too. I nodded, slow and shaky, and her lips curled into a thin, knowing smile that sent a shiver racing down my spine. Miss Thibodeau's voice cut through, shifting to a new tale. "And here's where the soldier died," she said, gesturing vaguely. "A Confederate deserter shot in this very room. Folks say he played the piano, beautifully too, until the war broke him. Guests hear him still, plucking keys in the night." The group murmured, some giggling, but my stomach dropped, the notes aligning with her words. Plink, thunk, plink, a ghostly rhythm growing insistent. I turned back to the woman, but she was gone, the space by the window empty, though the air there shimmered, heavy with something unseen. The notes kept coming, faster now, a frantic melody clawing at my skull, and I stumbled back, knocking into a chair. Tommy laughed. "What's your deal, man?" But I couldn't answer, the sound drowning everything else. The tour moved on, but I lingered, rooted to the spot, the piano's echo ringing in my ears. As we filed out, I caught the woman again. Outside now, standing under an oak, her shawl fluttering in a breeze that didn't touch the leaves. "Hey!" I called, voice trembling, and she turned, her eyes black hollows in a face too still. "You heard it, right? The piano?" She nodded, stepping closer, her voice a dry rasp. "Same as you. Just us. My husband, my boy, they didn't." She paused, head tilting again. "He's still here, you know, playing." My mouth went dry, the notes fading, but leaving a weight in my chest, like fingers pressing down. That night, back at the motel, I couldn't sleep, the room's cheap lamp casting jagged shadows on the wall. The others snored, oblivious, but I lay there, eyes wide, waiting. At 3 a.m., oh, it came again. A faint plink drifting through the window, then another, a melody seeping from nowhere. I bolted upright, heart pounding, and peered outside. The parking lot was empty, the night still, but the sound grew, a mournful tune curling around me like smoke. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it burrowed deeper, cold and relentless, until I saw it, a flicker in the glass, a reflection that wasn't mine. A man, gaunt and gray, in a tattered uniform, his hands hovering over invisible keys, head bowed as he played. I didn't scream, didn't wake the others, just sat there, frozen, as the notes stretched into dawn. We left the next day, the plantation a memory I tried to bury, but it followed me. Years later, in my quiet apartment, I'll hear it. A single plink in the dead of night, and I'll freeze, knowing he's there, somewhere, playing for me alone. His dead fingers striking keys only I can hear. Story 5. Whispers of the Stacks. The library at St. Martin's College was a squat, brutalist slab of concrete, its narrow windows staring out like dead eyes over the frostbitten lawns of upstate New York. It was November, my junior year, and I'd become a regular in its basement stacks, a labyrinth of dusty bookshelves open until 2 a.m. for idiots like me who left essays to the last minute. The stacks were two sprawling rooms flanking a dim hallway, reachable by a creaking main staircase, past a vending machine alcove that hummed like a dying engine. The shelves towered over scattered study desks, their warped wood groaning under the weight of forgotten tomes. And the air down there was cold, stale, with a faint tang of mildew that clung to your clothes. I'd picked a desk in the East Room that night, surrounded by cracked leather spines, racing to finish a 10-page paper on Puritan sermons due at 8 a.m. I'd been there since 9 p.m., the only sound my laptop's clacking keys, and the occasional shuffle of pages as I dug through reference books. By 11, the place had emptied out, save for one other guy, Evan, a lanky freshman I vaguely recognized from a psych class, hunched over a calculus textbook 3 desks down. His desk lamp cast a weak pool of yellow, leaving the rest of the room to the flickering fluorescence overhead, their buzz a constant drone. I was zoned out, caffeine jittering through my veins, the deadline looming like a guillotine when it started. A faint, rapid flip, 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 like someone riffling through a book at the far end of the stacks. My fingers paused, hovering over the keys, a prickle of annoyance cutting through my haze. "Great," I muttered, assuming some late-night prankster was screwing around. The sound persisted, a rhythmic whip, 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 sharp and insistent, slicing through the silence. I glared toward the shelves, their shadows stretching long and jagged, but saw nothing, just rows of books fading into the gloom. It went on for minutes, grating on my nerves, and I tried to ignore it, hunching lower over my screen. Evan didn't react, his pencil scratching away, oblivious or deaf. 5 minutes in, I snapped, shoving my chair back with a screech that echoed off the concrete walls. "Hey, knock it off!" I barked, stomping toward the noise, my sneakers scuffing the worn linoleum. 3 steps in, it stopped, dead silent, like a switch flipped off. I froze, breath fogging in the chill, peering into the dark aisle. Empty. No footsteps, no rustling, just the hum of lights and my own pulse thudding in my ears. I trudged back, muttering about assholes, and sank into my seat. The quiet held for 10 minutes, a fragile truce, until it erupted again. Flip, 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 louder, closer, like a massive book being fanned right behind the shelves. My stomach twisted, irritation flaring into unease. Evan looked up this time, his brow furrowing, and slammed his book shut. "You hear that too?" he hissed, voice low, eyes darting to the stacks. I nodded, relieved I wasn't crazy, and stood again. "Let's find this jerk," I said, grabbing my phone for its flashlight. He followed, his lanky frame casting a spindly shadow as we split up. Me down the left aisle, him the right, stalking toward the sound. It grew deafening, a frantic whip, 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 like a storm of pages tearing loose, pinpointing a spot near the back corner. The air thickened, cold seeping into my bones, and the shelves loomed taller, their edges blurring in the dim light. I rounded a row, beam sweeping the spines. Nothing, no one, just dust motes swirling in the glow. Evan met me at the end, his face pale, shaking his head. "Nobody," he whispered, voice trembling. The noise cut off again, abrupt and final, leaving a ringing void. We stood there, breaths shallow, staring at the empty aisle. The stacks had 4 entrances off the hall. We'd have seen someone slip in or out. No way they'd vanished. We shuffled back, uneasy, my skin crawling under my hoodie. "Probably a fan or something," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. Evan didn't buy it, his eyes flicking to the shadows, but we sat anyway, desperate to finish. I'd barely typed a sentence when it hit again. Flip, 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 explosive, right beside Evan's chair. He jolted, chair scraping, and I swear I saw the air ripple, a faint shimmer bending the light. "What the hell?" he yelled, shoving books into his bag, his lamp flickering like it'd blow. The sound swelled, a cacophony of unseen pages, and I felt it. A presence, heavy, pressing like eyes boring into my skull. Evan bolted, slinging his bag over his shoulder, and shouted, "I'm out!" before sprinting for the stairs. I grabbed my laptop, heart hammering, and tore after him, the noise chasing us up the steps, a ghostly roar fading as we hit the main floor. We burst into the lobby, panting, the night guard glancing up from his desk with a bored grunt. "You okay?" he mumbled, barely looking. I nodded, lying, and we stumbled into the freezing night, the library's bulk a silent monolith behind us. Evan didn't talk, just peeled off toward the dorms, his silhouette swallowed by the dark. I never went back to the stacks at night, not alone, not even with a crowd. Weeks later, I heard whispers, students complaining of noises down there, books found open on desks no one used, pages torn out and scattered. The janitor swore he'd seen a figure once, hunched over a shelf, gone when he blinked. I don't know what it was, ghost, prank, or something worse, but when I'm alone late at night, I still hear it. That faint flip, 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 a whisper from the stacks, calling me back to the dark. Story 6, The Gaze in the Corner. Our house on Maple Street was a plain, split-level home in Michigan, its beige exterior worn by years of harsh winters. I was 16, a high school junior, and my bedroom felt like a trap. Across from my bed was a small alcove, a shallow nook hidden behind the closet. The closet door, which never stayed fully closed no matter how hard I pushed, blocked all light, ceiling bulbs and street lamps alike, leaving that corner a pitch-black hole. I'd hated it since we moved in at age 10, but by January 1998, it wasn't just a quirk anymore. It was something alive, something watching. It was a bitter winter night, the wind howling outside, shaking the windows and piling snow against the glass. I'd stayed up past midnight, cramming for a history test on the Cold War, my desk lamp casting a dim glow over messy notes. Mom was working the night shift at the hospital, and my younger brother, Tim, slept downstairs, his snores faint through the floor. The house was mine, alone with the storm, but sleep wouldn't come. Too much coffee, too many facts buzzing in my head. I gave up studying, flopped onto my bed and stared at the ceiling, the lamp still humming. Then I felt it, a sharp, icy tingle on my neck, like someone's eyes were fixed on me. I'd sensed it before, that itch of being watched, but this time it was stronger, darker, dripping with hate. I opened my eyes slowly, dreading what I might see, and glanced at the alcove. There it was, a shape darker than the shadows around it, pressed into the corner like a stain. My heart jumped, goosebumps prickling my arms, but I squinted, telling myself it was nothing. A coat, a trick of tired eyes. I blinked hard, rubbed my face, but it didn't move. Tall, still, a vague outline that didn't belong. "You're just exhausted," I whispered, my voice shaky, and shut my eyes again. The feeling grew worse, heavy and mean, like a hand pressing on my chest. The air turned thick, sour, and I struggled to breathe, panic creeping in. Then I heard it, a loud creak, the sound of weight shifting on the hardwood floor. My eyes flew open, heart pounding, and the shape was gone from the alcove. I scanned the room, terrified, and spotted it. In the opposite corner by my dresser, closer now, its form sharper, shoulders and a tilted head taking shape. This wasn't my imagination. It had moved. A small cry slipped out, and I yanked the blanket over my head, curling up tight, sweat beading on my skin despite the cold. Another creak, softer, nearer, like it was stepping closer, testing me. I bit my lip until it bled, praying it would leave if I stayed hidden. Time crawled by. 5 minutes, 10, maybe more, and the silence stretched thin, broken only by my shallow breaths and the wind outside. I peeked out, trembling, letting the blanket drop to my chin. The corner was empty, the room quiet, but the air felt alive, buzzing with something waiting. I buried my face in the pillow, tears burning my eyes, muttering, "It's not real, it's not real," until sleep finally dragged me down. My dreams were jagged, something faceless leaning over me, its breath cold and damp, its hands hovering just above my skin. Morning came, gray and bleak, snow stacked high outside. I stumbled downstairs, eyes sunken, avoiding the mirror. I didn't want to see my own fear. Tim sat at the table eating cereal, clueless, while Mom trudged in from her shift, her nurse's uniform wrinkled. "You look awful," she said, pouring coffee, but I shrugged, blaming the test. I didn't tell her, couldn't. They'd think I was losing it, and maybe I was, but that creak, that shape, felt too real. I skipped school, faking a headache, and camped on the couch all day, the TV's noise a weak shield against the memory. Night loomed again, and I begged him to sleep in my room, saying I'd heard mice. He rolled his eyes, but dragged his sleeping bag upstairs, crashing on the floor, his snores a thin comfort. Nothing happened that night or the next, and I started to doubt myself. Maybe it was just stress turning shadows into monsters. But a week later, alone again, it came back. I was in bed, lights off, the house silent when that stare hit me, cold, hateful, boring into my skull. I refused to look, pulling the covers tight, praying it'd go away, but then the floor creaked, slow, deliberate, right beside my bed. A sob broke free, and I lunged for the lamp, flicking it on. The room was empty, the corner bare, but the air hummed with anger, and I swear the closet door shifted, easing open on its own. I stopped sleeping there after that, moved to the couch, then Tim's room when Mom was gone, making excuses she didn't believe. We left that house a year later, but the shadow stuck with me. Now, in my small apartment, when the lights dim and the wind howls, I feel it. That icy gaze, unblinking, watching from a corner I can't pinpoint. The floor creaks sometimes, soft and purposeful, and I don't look. I won't, because I know it's there, waiting. Patient. Its hatred a weight I'll never shake.